Hello friends. A while back somebody asked me if I would do a video or a course actually on being a good dad. And Rebecca and I have been thinking of putting together a parenting course, but I wanted to do one here specifically on being a good father. Now, as I embarked on my own fatherhood journey, I had a specific goal in mind. And this video is really for people that have that same goal. As you probably know, I tend to have pretty radical and different views on how to do almost everything in life. And so this is going to be no different. Now, I've also had the advantage of being able to watch people at ReWild University. For those of you who don't know, for 12 years, 14, I ran a wilderness school, and this is an extension of it, the virtual component of it, but we were doing in-person classes, and I got to work with all kinds of different people. And I started to notice something very, very interesting. People that had been parented in a standard disciplinarian household, they were very, very functional and could do most things really, really well. But when they came up against the really, really tough stuff, they would often be the first people to fall apart. And at ReWild U, people had to face all kinds of really tough stuff. You would do all sorts of really difficult scenario challenges. You would have to go without food. You would be cold. You would be hungry. You would deal with fears. It was people that had been brought up differently that were able to deal with these higher level stressors, and often to deal with them very effectively. And so as I was parenting, as I was watching these people at ReWild University, I started to realize that there really is there's something about our usual method of parenting, and of course being a father, that doesn't really work. There's always exceptions to the rule. So you might use these methods and it may not turn out well for your child. And you might use the regular disciplinarian methods that I'm going to give you some very good reasons why you shouldn't, I do believe. You may use those and everything might turn out just fine. So we're talking about hugely complex systems. A person, a child, and how they grow up has to do with so many factors. But I wanted to give my children the best tools for navigating life that I could. I wanted them to have emotional resilience. I wanted them to have a full range of cognitive abilities that would allow them to navigate stressors, joys, to really appreciate life, mindfulness, basic things that would allow them to forge their own path. Not the path that I thought they should go and follow, but the path that they ultimately choose to follow. Whatever that path might be, I wanted them to have good tools for it. That's what this video is about. This video is also for people that are willing to do hard work. Because if you are someone that just is going to take the easy way out, you see something, you're just going to allow yourself to get angry and be owned by that anger, this probably isn't for you. This is for people that are willing to, that want to have some grit, that really want to tough it out, that want to work on themselves and thus be the best fathers they can be. I have two daughters. They're aged 9 and 12 right now. And very often I will hear from other parents that will say, wow, your children are so well behaved and so respectful. You must have a lot of really strict rules in your household. And they're often shocked when I say, we don't have any rules at all. We don't have any discipline at all. Now this can be shocking, especially if you are of a more, well, I'm going to generalize here and say that most of us that have a more conservative mindset are believers in this. You see something, you punish it, and that's how you correct behavior, and you reward positive behavior. But I'm going to suggest that that approach is kind of a cop-out. It comes out of this idea that we want people to be self-responsible, and we want people to be held accountable. But think for a moment about what punishment is. When you're punished, you just unwillfully submit to whatever it is because the person is more powerful than you. So if you are sent to prison, you don't really have to do anything. It's all being done for you. You are just put there. The real punishment, or the real being held accountable, would be if you were asked to sit down and to make changes in yourself. Changes in yourself that would change your behavior. That's actual accountability. But that's not what rewards and punishment does. And the reward system conditions people to be followers, to just try to get an extrinsic reward. Give me my little reward. That will create good behavior out of me. Not coming out of self-responsibility, just to get my prize. So when we raise our children with punishments and rewards, we're not actually teaching them accountability, nor are we teaching them to have that radical self-responsibility. We're teaching them essentially to just bend to the will of those more powerful than them. And that translates into being followers. I'll talk about this more in the discipline section, but do we want our children just to blindly follow their government, their whoever is in authority over them? Or do we want them to be able to look at a system, see what's fair, what goes by their moral compass, and to live the best life they can, and to look at those systems and say, maybe sometimes those systems need to change a little bit. So if we want to raise our children just as followers, then again, this video is not for you. If you want your children to have leadership capabilities and you want them to have that radical self-responsibility, then keep watching. Being a father these days often is just seen as being a provider. But I'm going to suggest it's much more than that. As a father, we have to be providers. We should be financially or otherwise supporting our family structure. We should be protectors. We should be able to protect our family. I'm not just talking guns and protection from violence, but also emotionally, to give them a nurturing environment. And we need to be nurturing. We need to also be able to look at that child and say, how can I best give them the soil, the sunlight that's going to help them to grow to be the strongest people they can be? So let's move forward with this mini course. I'm going to cover 6 main points. The first key point to remember is that our children learn by example. You are constantly setting an example for them. Too often, as fathers, we can err on the side of saying, do this, do that, while we do the opposite. So if I tell my child they shouldn't eat candy because it's unhealthy, and then I sit back and I chug down a Miller Lite, I am clearly showing them something, aren't I? And I'm clearly telling them something about myself and my character. Now, there are many examples where we'll see this, and especially in emotional examples. So it's very easy again to say, kid, wipe away your tears and stop being upset about this, you broke a toy. At the same time that I'm getting upset with that child. So they're not being emotionally regulated and I'm not being emotionally regulated. Here again, I am setting the example. And children are superb mimics. They will follow what we do over what we say. Now, in the short term, there's an illusion here that happens. It's going to happen with discipline too when we get to that. But in the short term, our words can have an effect. And so if we are unable to see into the future a little bit, or not able to observe a longer timeline, we will live under the illusion that what we say makes a difference and our children listen to us. If you think your children listen to you, see if you ever have to repeat yourself. If you do, you know they're not really listening to you. So pay attention to that and instead live what you're trying to instill in your children. So if you want them to be emotionally regulated, you must be emotionally regulated. If you want them to be kind to others, you must be kind to others. If you want them to be resilient in times of stress, you must be resilient in times of stress. What this does is it fosters an experience of mutual respect. And when you respect your child and they respect you, not because you're an authority figure, but because you act in accordance with your words, then that will create a long-term respect-based relationship. Typically, what we'll see happen, I heard this story over and over and over again at ReWild U. People grew up in very disciplined households, and up to a certain age, it differs, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, the child will bend to their parent's will because the parent is that much stronger. Not only physically stronger, but just boom, has more power and personality. But then children start to see that they wield some power too. And as soon as they see that, then they rebel. And say, screw you. They see that we are not consistent with our own behavior. They don't have a good example of being an intrinsically integritous person. So they're not going to respect us anymore. And this comes out in many households as a rebellion where children are going to be throwing fits. There's going to be a lot of tension. There's going to be stress, a lot of family conflict, simply because there isn't mutual respect. And the parents have not led by positive example. Now, number 2 is so important that I'm actually going to hit it again at number 6 from a slightly different angle. But this is that your child must see you as someone who's continuing to grow and evolve themselves. Traditional parenting advice is often don't apologize or show weakness or anything else to your children. That creates a facade, and it creates a facade that at some point will be broken, and the child will see through and see that we've been dishonest and we're not really who we have been pretending to be. When we see somebody pretending to be strong and macho but they're not, we see them break down, then we lose so much respect for them. When we see somebody who can say, this is really tough, I am having a super hard time, I feel like just falling down and crying, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to find a way through this. I might need a hand, but I'm going to do it. That's something we can respect because we are all human. We have fears, we have our foibles, we have our positives and our negatives. If we can be vulnerable with our children, honest with our children, apologize to them when we have not acted in integrity with ourselves, then we show them that we are someone who can be respected. We're not so small that we need to hide behind made-up masks and walls. And that shows them that they can be vulnerable with us. Because if they're going to grow and self-evolve, if they're going to develop powerful cognitive skills to be able to deal with life, they have to be able to express their vulnerabilities. It's simply that we cannot grow stronger in an area unless we know where we're weak. And that, unfortunately, if you were brought up like a lot of men are in our culture, we're taught to put masks over our weaknesses. And that just makes our weak places weaker. We need to strip those masks down and show those weak places so that they can grow strong. We do that ourselves, and then we instill it in our children. Number 3 is instead of using a rewards punishment based system, we use mutual respect. Now, I know this is a tough one for a lot of people, and especially if we've been brought up in that traditional discipline equals the only way, essentially, to regulate behavior in a child. It's how our justice system is put together. It's how our schools operate. Notice if your kid is going to public school, they are being trained in this reward punishment-based system. But look carefully at it. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. When we punish somebody, we are just a stronger person putting something onto them. It takes no effort on their part. It takes no growth on their part. It takes no accountability on their part. They just are forced to accept something. And so we are not asking them to be accountable for their actions. We're just administering a punishment, and then, well, you know how that works, right? Look at it really carefully. How many times do people who punish have to punish? If you're a parent that's using punishment right now, do you punish something once and it's very effective and the child never does that again? Or are you having to ground them over and over, yell at them over and over, dock them of whatever it's going to be over and over? That's because punishment does not create mutual respect. Children do not respect you. They're just going to take whatever punishment they have to take. They have no choice about it, right? And then they're going to go on. It's not going to shift behavior over time. Rewards, it's the same thing. It teaches an extrinsic motivation. It teaches the children not to do something because they want to be a better person, not to do it because it feels right inside, but to do it because they're going to get a prize. So we're teaching them a pretty shallow way to go through life. Totally different than if we teach mutual respect. And the reason we see so much rewards and punishment being used is that mutual respect is the tough part. If you believe in accountability, let's hold ourselves accountable. Let's be the people that we want our children to see. So when we do that, we create this system of mutual respect. And that's why, for instance, our girls seem so well behaved. They've learned to, inside of themselves, look and say, does this seem like a good course of action? Is it honest? Is it doing good for myself and the people around me? Is it going to help me grow? So different than just see what I can get away with. And that's really what the rewards and punishments teach. What can I get away with? Because pretty soon, if I'm punished, I'm not saying, wow, how can I have the best behavior possible? I'm saying, how can I make sure that the punishers don't see what I'm doing? So now by punishing, I'm also teaching my children to lie to us, to hide from us, to do things behind our backs. And that reaps very predictable fruit down the road. Mutual respect is completely different. At the very end of this video, I'm going to give an example that kind of sums up all of these principles. And you'll hopefully see there what I mean by mutual respect and how it's created. But this is something that hopefully you have in many of your adult relationships. And if you have a positive relationship with your life partner, then you're going to have a mutually respectful relationship there. It's not about manipulation. It's not about hiding or lying. It's about being honest with each other. It's about being able to help each other grow and evolve. That's what a mutual respectful relationship brings, which is a completely different fruit than we get from the rewards and punishment approach. Mutual respect requires a very special skill called listening. And listening is something that a lot of us are not very good at. We're not really taught it in our culture. Usually when people are talking to us, we're often in our own head formulating a counter to whatever they're saying. If we learn to listen, this is such a huge game changer. So I'm going to link to a video on listening, and you can go check it out if you want to brush up on that skill or develop that skill. If you feel like you don't have it, this video will really help you out. Number 4 is to allow your children to figure some things out for themselves. Another normal thing in our culture is for parents to just jump in and show children how to do something or to do it for them. There's a kind of a good rule of thumb here, and that is that if a child is trying to do something, let them try. Even if you can see they're doing it in completely the wrong way, or they're not going to have success, allow them to experiment and try for themselves. As they do this, they're developing cognitive skills of problem solving, of frustration tolerance, a whole host of things that is going to help them in all other aspects of life. We did this at ReWild U a lot. Instead of saying, here's exactly how to set up a fire, we'd say, go, try it out yourself. Give it a shot. See what happens. And then you start to learn from your own mistakes. And over time, you can give selective guidance, but you give people first. You give the children a chance to learn on their own and to explore a problem on their own. Now, if a child asks for help, says, I can't get this open, you can say, okay, well, let me see if I can help you. But still, don't jump to a solution for them. Give them some little hints. Say, is there another way you could look at this? What if you tried something a little more like this? But don't deliver the solution. This is important, again, because every time, and there are many, many, many times a day that this happens, a child's going to come up against something that is challenging for them. If we just give them the solution, we've robbed them of something really important. It stokes our ego. It makes us feel like we're the big parents and we can do this and we can open that and we can teach them how to, whatever it's going to be. But we're robbing them of something. We're just kind of making ourselves feel good, but we're not doing what's best for our children. So let them puzzle through stuff. If they get super frustrated, you're there definitely to help. You don't have to let them just flounder. But a huge difference between jumping in right from the beginning, solving their problems for them, and allowing them to explore things with a friendly helper. Sometimes what this means is allowing them also to just help you with something. Let's say we're driving, you get a flat tire. Sometimes as a father, you might feel, oh, I should just get out and change the tire. But very different if you take your child with you and they don't have to change it themselves. Maybe they're 4 years old and they're not going to be able to even lift it. But you can show them what you're doing. They can hold tools for you. They can help out in whatever way they can. And again, you're showing them how to solve a problem by being there with them through it, instead of just doing it yourself. Every time you have an opportunity, every time there's something that's broken or something that's not going right, you have that opportunity there to let them be part of the solution. This is just as true for emotional challenges. So your children are going to hit emotional challenges all the time. And we can, as parents, especially if you're feeling like a more loving parent, you can want to jump in and just make things better for them. This is not doing them a favor. If you go in and you help them navigate their emotions, that is a different story. That's a video on its own, actually many videos. And so I'm just going to reference our whole channel here and say that if you are interested in helping your children in that way, we have a host of videos on emotional resilience and being able to navigate anger and frustration and things like that on this channel. So search through and we have a playlist that's focused on that. You're going to find tons of material. The last note on this step is to remember that, of course, sometimes for safety reasons, we're going to want to step in. So this is not about letting your child go into graphic danger, but it is about allowing them to experiment with their world. Number 5 is to be a good partner. I'm just going to use the example of a wife because I'm married to Rebecca and that's what I'm used to saying. insert whatever you have going on. So with your wife, being a really good partner, the reason here is that if you have a crappy relationship, it is going to cause so much stress for the whole family that your children are not going to have the same sort of nourishment. They're just not. We can think, yes, there's some truth to it. Adversity can create growth. But if there's constant adversity, we just get into cycles of stress. And we don't really learn how to navigate various aspects of life. We just kind of have to focus on that one big stressor. When parents are on each other, to children, that's overwhelming. It's going to take almost all of their focus and their attention. So we're really robbing them of something if we are not a good partner to our wife. And I'm going to make an assumption here, because the advice I'm going to give on this step is not for people who have a crappy relationship. If you have a relationship that is full of tension and stress, then get some professional counseling, give it a good shot. If it's not working, get out. It's not doing anybody a favor to sit and stay in those relationships. So if, on the other hand, you have a really loving wife, you're very connected, you understand each other, you believe in each other, you have mutual trust and connection, then this advice is for you specifically. And this is going to be kind of radical, but it's an important one because our culture very much teaches blame. Blame is the opposite of self-responsibility. If you want to see blame, go listen to any politician you want, and pretty much they're all just going to be sitting blaming the other side about all the world's problems instead of taking self-responsibility themselves. Now, this happens too in all kinds of relationships. It's so easy to blame, to say, well, it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of this person. Instead of saying, how am I responsible for what I see unfolding around me? As a father and as the husband to your wife, I am going to suggest that radically you take a stance of self-responsibility and you say, when conflict comes up in the family, with my wife or with my children, it's all my fault. Okay, yes, this may sound radical, but I'm going to tell you why this has some really big benefits. It's so powerful because it gets us out of the blame game. The truth is, when there's an issue with our wife, when we see negative behavior in our children, it is, at least in part, to do with ourselves and actions, words that we have performed ourselves and our children are mimicking or are setting off patterns of behavior in our wife or in the rest of our family. When I say it's all my fault, I jump completely to the other side of things and I don't allow myself to play that blame game. I look and I say, how was I responsible for what I'm seeing around me? This leads by example. It teaches by example. Your children over time are going to mimic this and are going to be people that stop saying, oh, it's all that person's fault. When we do that, we abdicate all self-responsibility. When we do that, we no longer are willing to self-evolve, to grow, to be strong. We get to go into our weakest place and just say the blame is out there. Don't teach that. Teach responsibility for what you see around you. And if you take that radical stance, we're all still going to blame, right? None of us are going to be perfect at this. So by taking that radical stance, you're not actually saying that you are to blame for every negative thing in your family, but you are going to shift yourself strongly in the direction of not playing that blame game, not taking shelter behind blame, and teaching that self-responsibility through your actions. This brings us to number 6, the most important one of all. I hit it at number 2 a little bit, just want to drill it in further. And that's to be a good father, we must be focused on our own self-evolution. If we are owned by our anger, by our frustrations, then that's what we're teaching. If we fall apart under stress, if we don't have skills to meet the challenges around us, that's what we're teaching. So by being focused on self-evolution, we teach that to our children. We teach them that the more well-rounded they become, the more cognitive skills they develop, the more resilient they'll be in meeting life, the more creative they'll be in meeting life, the more fun they're going to have, the more success they're going to have. Life is just going to be a more positive experience if we nurture them by nurturing ourselves. Being a dad will give you the ultimate training ground for this kind of self-evolution, this kind of self-development, because being a parent is super, super hard. Rebecca and I were together for 20 years working on ourselves, essentially trying to be monks before we embarked on parenthood. And it makes me realize that the monastic monks who have no family and just can concentrate on monkhood, in a way they have things kind of easy. To self-evolve while under the stressors of being a father, that's a real challenge. If you're not able to moderate your emotions, if you're not able to take a breath and calm yourself, if you're not able to be aware, take different perceptual stances, being a father will be very, very difficult. If you evolve yourself, it will get easier and easier over time. It actually can become pretty fun, but it will always throw you challenges. It will always help you grow. And as you grow as a father, you will help your children grow. You'll be the best father you can be. Now, I said at the end of this video, I was going to give an example that kind of sums everything up. And I'm going to read this. I have it written down here. I'm going to read this example, and it is just a scenario that unfolds. And I think you'll see the difference from our regular cultural way of meeting things and how it can be if you embrace this more radical self-responsibility version of being a father. All right, here goes. Your child's in the kitchen and you hear something break. You go into the room and you see your favorite mug shattered on the floor. You're probably going to have an immediate reaction. Anger. The undisciplined, weak part of us wants to lash out. You clumsy kid, that was my favorite mug. But instead, you take a deep breath and assess the situation. This was likely an accident, and you've certainly broken things in the past. You managed to shift your focus from the mug to the child. It feels good to know that you haven't been owned by your reaction, and you give a soft smile. You okay? No, your kid shouts. I'm so mad at you. In that moment, you realize that this probably wasn't an accident. It was your child acting out and breaking something of yours. What are you going to do now? Again, reaction is probably going to surge up. It's time for punishment. It's okay to be angry after all, right? We want our kids to be able to have emotions, but it is not okay to destroy other people's things to feed our anger. So seeing that, knowing that we want to teach that that's not okay, we get ready to administer punishment. And then suddenly we realize that if we yell at that child and deal out the punishment, we're doing the very same thing that we're telling them they shouldn't do. We're getting angry and we're letting our anger dictate our actions. Exactly what happened with them. In this case, we're punishing him. And in that moment, hopefully we see that and we take radical responsibility. We realize that they have learned this basic action, this reaction action of acting out when they're angry. They've learned that from you. In that moment, we have a chance to change things, to change our child by changing ourselves. Instead of getting angry, you might say, "You must be pretty upset with me." "I am." "I'm wondering if you'd share with me why." That begins a dialogue. It's a dialogue where you'll have to take the higher ground for the next few minutes. If these are ingrained patterns that have been going on for a long time, you may have to keep that higher ground for many conflicts to come. But you have met your child with mutual respect, and he's begun to learn a new way. You are teaching him, by example, the cognitive skills of anger management and perspective taking. You're holding him accountable for breaking your mug in the most powerful way possible by asking him and you to become better people from that experience. You're beginning to put an end to the punishment cycle that is really just a mindless reaction that's on endless repeat. You're being a good dad, a great dad. That's it, my friends. I hope you found some gems in this little mini course and find it valuable. In some ways, this is best for new fathers who don't already have ingrained patterns that they have to deal with, but these principles work for anybody. This is what I used with people who came to ReWild University quite often. If they did not have emotional regulation, if they were unable to meet those tough stressors, it's usually because they had parents that showed them how not to. By doing my best, and I'm certainly not perfect at it all the time either, but I try. By doing my best to mirror positive skills, to demonstrate how we can navigate life without being owned by our frustration, by our anger, by showing how we can take various perspectives, look at a situation from many angles, and come to positive solutions by being listening, by being aware, by being compassionate. These are basic life tools that ideally we'd all be given in our childhood. And you as a father have a chance to give those to your child right now. This is the moment. If you have been stuck in those cycles of punishment and reward, to break out of it. And if you've been in those cycles, been doing those for years and years, it's going to take some time. And you may never get to a full mutual respect place with your children. But you can go a long ways down that road. Change can always be made. All of us have neuroplasticity and can make positive changes. All right, my friends, share in the comments. What did you think of this? Do you have any experience with any of these methods? And of course, come back to this video months, year later, if you've tried these things, and share how it's worked for you. So much love to you all. Thanks for being part of this channel. Talk with you in the comments.